Scenes like this are becoming more common across our suburbs. People training alongside professional firefighters learning how to save their homes.
I classify them now as the third tier of the fire brigade because the numbers are growing so strong, and they make a major difference during the serious fires. So we have to make sure that they have the appropriate equipment and the training necessary to use the equipment.
These are the members of one of the first community fire units in the Hunter region, adding to 4,500 similar volunteers already trained, mainly across the Greater Sydney area.
We live at the top of a ridge, and if a fire happened to get away in there, it would be a bit of a disaster for the houses on the top of the ridge. So I wanted some sort of extra protection, and I found out about the community fire units.
The state pays for the $15,000 trailer full of equipment, with training carried out by the nearest local brigade.
Been trained to open up the hydrants on the side of the road, put in the standpipe, fit the hoses correctly. Also, we've got a Davy pump which we can put into the swimming pools, or static water supply as they call them.
Communities interested in joining the scheme can find more information on the Fire Brigade's website at fire.newsouthwales.gov.au. Paul Lobb, NBN News. The Newcastle Dramatic Art Club launched its new production of Les Miserables in the Civic Theatre bar today. But thanks to the new hiring arrangement, they'll be on stage this November.
I love you, but when the night is over, bring him home, bring him home.
It makes it much more affordable for us as a community organisation to be able to come in.
Effectively $900 less per day to now use the theatre, and what that gets you is a built-in amount of technical labour, so that you don't have to worry about some of the straight up and down operating costs, and the rent has been reduced by $900.
Meantime, Newcastle's keenest young musicians are getting ready for Music Week, which gets underway on Sunday. The week-long festival includes a music expo and a range of concerts, including street festivals in Derby and Beaumont streets, all designed to showcase local talent.
Obviously left home when I was 16, so that was a big call for Mum and Dad to do that, so I've got to thank them for that. And they sent me out, and Mum and Dad, they travel every day, every weekend to the games and stuff like that, so they spend a lot of time watching my football. The captaincy, and realise that you are a senior player, and you're required to do things that are to lift the side. So without Joey there is some points to be freed up. We had a couple of close games at Newcastle there, and I ended up getting a couple of points. So it was very close in the end between Brett and I.
Miss Universe was on the bank of the Yarra River for Melbourne's Spring Fashion Week when a set of slippery old stairs proved a downfall. In true style, the smile barely left Jennifer's face. Newcastle's very own Miss Universe, again showing she has the great recovery skills to match great beauty.
These are some of the proceeds from a day-long operation that Lake Macquarie Police hope will deal a blow to the illicit drug trade.
We've targeted these people for our own specific reasons and based on intelligence, and we're hoping that it has some effect on what is being sold around, in particular, the Windale area.
This Manfred Avenue home, one of two addresses that have been the subject of covert police activities over the past 5 months. Officers moved in with search warrants under the drug house legislation. A resident of the Manfred Street house has been charged with allowing it to be used as a drug premises, and along with the second man also faces a charge of supplying a prohibited drug on an ongoing basis. A 38-year-old man arrested in a separate raid in Lake Street is also charged with the drug premises and ongoing supply offences. Among those to appear in court today were James Craig Conway and Kenneth William Wickens. While bail applications were made for both men, they were formally refused and the pair were remanded in custody. The third man, who's being treated in hospital, had his charges adjourned until tomorrow. There'll be other court appearances as a result of the Windale operation, with a number of people arrested when they arrived at the homes while police were still there.
And we arrested a further 11 people who've committed offences in regards to being on drug premises and minor possession and property offences.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
How's this for a day of school? No one was late for this class, with young riders getting tips on what makes the difference between the best and the rest. Most parents happy though the jump sections weren't compulsory. Newcastle's own freestyle king Michael Norris among those giving a few lessons on how to thrill ahead of tomorrow night's Stadium Cross State Round. That's racing on a man-made track which gives riders of all abilities a chance to race.
It's a good series to progress your skills and bring it out on top, you know.
Youngster Jason Reid, one of many hoping to follow his cousin Chad's now famous footsteps and one day compete in the US. No doubting who New Lambton South's favourite ex-student is. Olympic silver medal winning diver Matthew Helm on hand to present the Sport Awards at his old school today, including a shield now named in his honour. In hockey, Norths meet South tomorrow for the 11th consecutive time in the Premier League decider. Undefeated all season, North is looking for successive titles. They'll have to keep John Finance quiet. He's scored 53 goals this season, smashing his own previous record by almost 20.
ADI at Carrington is busy building landing barges for the Navy at the moment, but its sights are set on a much bigger project. Teaming up with shipbuilder Forjax, the consortium will bid for a $2 billion deal to build 2 new ships which will replace the current transport vessels, Canimbla and Menora.
They have served us well and continue to serve us well, but they won't give us the capability that we need for the future, and that's why we're investing in new ships.
They're challenging projects, particularly the amphibious ship. It's the largest that ever been built in Australia, and we think we needed both the skills and capabilities of both companies coming together to effectively carry out this project.
The work would be spread between ADI and Forjack's sites in Newcastle, Sydney and Brisbane, but would result in extra local jobs.
If we were to succeed on this project, there would be, while not yet concluded, hundreds of extra jobs created here in Newcastle.
The consortium also wants the $100 million job to refit a cargo ship as an oiler for the Navy, replacing the Westralia.
It's a strong history of shipbuilding in this region of Australia, and they will be very competitive bidders.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
This is the apartment block sending ripples through Lake Macquarie Council.
It will be a benchmark for what happens with similar sites in Charlestown, so for the council to get this right is an imperative.
Kingston Piazza lodged the DA for the controversial landmark development in March 2003, proposing a 10-storey 61 apartment structure be built on this site on the Pacific Highway. But the proposal didn't meet council's new planning guidelines, and when the 42-day approval period lapsed, developer Kingston decided to appeal in the Land and Environment Court. A council decision is due next Monday, and if a consensus cannot be reached, the case will go to court.
The timeframes are getting a little bit too close to the Land Environment Court, and I think Council, if we can reasonably determine it, we should.
But the Mayor's forthrightness is being interpreted by some as pushiness.
It would appear that way, that some members of the council are pushing for a decision to be made on Monday, which I think would be wrong.
Mayor Piper has quashed suggestions he's hurrying the process along.
I haven't advanced it at all. I'm just letting it follow its normal course. And for Councillor Jenkins to make that comment I found it a little bit maybe offensive, but just surprising.
The council will meet with the applicant to discuss the DA on Thursday. Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
Reagan Jackson knows all about combining an elite sporting career with motherhood. 16-month-old Tom kept her off the court in 2002 and 2003 before she returned to the National Netball League on a one-year basis with the Jaegers. She decided to shelve those retirement plans this month, but that was just 2 days before finding out she was expecting her second child.
It was a hard decision for me to come to play again next year, but finding out that I'm pregnant again, that takes precedence over that.
Playing in the mid-court and being captain made Jackson the Jaegers' cornerstone. And now coach Maria Lynch has a big job finding a replacement centre before April. In the long term, 28-year-old Jackson has not ruled out yet another comeback.
After 2 children, it's going to get a lot harder than the first time, but I think if you put your mind to anything, you can do whatever you want. So,
in a glittering National League career, Jackson won a premiership with the Sydney Swifts, but has some unfinished business with the Jaegers.
I think I feel like there's just a little bit more I want to do with netball, so we'll just have next year off and see if I can get back again the year after.
Todd Nardi, NBN News. Consistently overpowered last season, the Pirates are determined to gain a reputation as a side that can and will muscle up, and who better to do that against than defending champions, the Sydney Kings.
They play a physical style, but I think they'll see a physical style from us.
And to help in that department, two of the big men will return from injury tonight. Last year's MVP Geordie Cullen and team co-captain Ben Melmoth have been cleared to play in the season's first match in Newcastle. Meantime, the man to play alongside Kavossi Franklin as the Hunters' second import player seems to have finally been decided. The Pirates players are eagerly awaiting the arrival of 23-year-old Californian guard or forward Brian Weathers. The club says it's now just waiting for the agreement to be approved by the NBL.
We're still missing our second import. He'll come in probably, hopefully later this week and get the whole team together and shake it up.
The Pirates' first competition game is on September the 30th. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Michael Ulrich couldn't believe what he was seeing as a young man got in his four-wheel drive and began to drive it away in front of Newcastle Courthouse. Cornered briefly and with the owner frantically trying to stop him, the thief fumbled with the gears but managed to reverse. With the driver's door locked, the boy drove off, narrowly missing Michael and speeding away with his Toyota Land Cruiser. What's happened?
Yeah, I just had my car stolen out the front of the court.
So what you looked when you came out the front, you saw?
I seen a bloke stand over there with a mobile phone beside it, and I just kept an eye on him, and then the next thing he jumped in it, took off.
And you tried to stop him?
I can't stop him. I'm not strong enough.
So did you get a good look at him?
Oh, he had a hat on. No, I didn't really. I was more worried about the car. I was almost going to throw myself in front of it, but I thought he'd run over me.
At least a dozen people waiting outside the courthouse witnessed the theft, but there were no police or court officers to be seen.
I was just sitting there, couldn't believe it.
Couldn't believe it, especially out the front of the courthouse and the police station just up the road. Heaps of police around here, but yeah, the audacity of them these days, you know, they'll take them from anywhere.
Police say the owner was running late for an appointment and had left his keys in the car. Detectives will view this image in a bid to identify the thief. Paul Lobb, NBN News. The past week has brought free kicks for new stadiums in Penrith and Melbourne, and those pushing for an upgrading of Energy Australia Stadium in Newcastle say the Hunter should be shown the same respect by the federal government.
Penrith look like a fairly wealthy area to me. I'm talking football-wise with their leagues club and stadium-wise, and yet they get 10 million. They get money in Melbourne, and no doubt they need it. But certainly I think it's a little bit pointed to be giving it to certain areas that maybe are swinging seats and not to deserving cases in the Hunter Valley.
Business leaders met today calling on the federal government to recognise the Hunter.
The losses of World Cups, I mean, we've lost submarines contracts, we've lost lots of things, and I think it's not a matter of asking for a handout, it's a matter of just the recognition that what Newcastle and the Hunter contributes to a national economy, and I think that we're deserving of getting some of these rewards that are handed out times by government.
State government money is already being used to improve seating at the ground, but locals say the venue is much more than just a stadium.
That stadium allows sports to be played to give Newcastle a sense of achievement, a place on the planet, if you like, And you might remember back when the night started, it gave this city a pride in their own offspring, their own kids.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Just down the road from Australia's horse capital, it was no surprise the show's first day followed an equine theme. There were up-and-comers testing their control skills in the sporting events, other juniors were show jumping, but much of the action was in the camp drafting arena, where 350 of the sport's best were competing for valuable national circuit points. Crowds picked up as the afternoon wore on, and many decided the best way to ring in the start of the school holidays was with an exhilarating amusement ride. The ground's showpiece, the 130-year-old recently restored grandstand, will tonight be packed to the rafters for what's arguably one of the world's toughest individual sports, the rodeo.
We've got the Matt and Rachel Adams stock from Mandoran. They're wild bulls, they've got big horns and they like chasing people outside the arena.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Congestion is no surprise to the thousands of weekend motorists heading to one of Newcastle's most popular spots. Yesterday afternoon, traffic officers were stationed at the roundabouts at Nobby's Road and Watt Street for nearly 2 hours because of gridlock.
And it's an issue that police are dealing with on a regular basis.
Senior police are supporting the city's traffic committee proposal for the area, which includes installing emergency boom gates to prevent western-bound traffic entering Wharf Road.
The gates will simply replace police officers being there doing that work at the time of need.
While police managed to ease the Wharf Road problem, motorists then experienced delays and traffic build-up along nearby residential streets.
Our aim is to keep cars moving, albeit at a slow pace, but to keep them moving around the city.
The proposal to better handle the foreshore's traffic headaches is open for public comment until next Monday. Council will make its decision early November.
So everyone wants to be in this beautiful city at the one time, so we need to be able to manage the traffic so that everyone can enjoy it to the best of its capacity.
While the film Bondi Tsunami is aimed at a Japanese cult audience, it's likely to appeal to surfers on the state's central coast, featuring surf breaks like Avoca and Shelley Beach.
We shot the film up around Catherine Hill Bay. A big part of the movie's up there, and around the Central Coast in some of the caravan parks there and the milk bar, and also we've done all the surfing footage in this area. So watch out, you'll recognise a few places.
Director Rachel Lucas stopped into Newcastle for a surf check today. Costing around $150,000 to make, her film is considered low budget and was shot entirely using a digital handycam.
It's a sort of a bizarre, surreal, funny travelogue that goes all around Australia. 4 Japanese driving an old EK Holden up the east coast of Oz.
Bondi's Tsunami is currently being toured around the state before it's unleashed on the popular surf scene in Japan. The factory floor of AMP Control was the government's location to explain plans to address the nation's shortage of tradespeople. It includes a promise the Hunter will get a technical trades college for senior high school pupils, with the region to tell the coalition what it needs.
To put a proposal to us, the federal government, as to where they'd like a technical trade college, what form they want it to take. Do they want it to specialise in electrical, for example, or indeed in construction and building, or in metals fabrication?
The government's promise comes with AMP Control having just received 350 applications for apprenticeships, the biggest number in 4 years. But it's highlighted a problem for both federal and state governments.
And the problem is there's still 50% of them could not be utilised because of the maths and English levels that were in their results.
Meantime, Kim Beazley has made a promise Labor hopes will deliver a pinpoint result in Patterson. Under the ALP, Williamtown remains a key air defence base and will become more neighbourly.
If it means acquiring houses, we'll acquire them. If it means ensuring that the council gets the proper information on noise levels, they'll get it.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
For a side that has only trained as a full squad this week, the Pirates looked good in their first game. You had new import Brian Weathers on the boards, Gavossi Franklin finding range, and Big Ben Melmoth fighting hard in the paint. And they needed all of them against competition favourites, the Bullets. Keeping pace with Brisbane in the first quarter was easier said than done, with Derek Rucker leading things and Kevin Freeman doing it all his own. Franklin, though, helping the home side to a 62-52 lead at the main break. Easy come, easy go, the 10-point buffer evaporating quickly, with former Falcon Rucker sinking them and setting them up as they regained a 3-point lead heading into the final term. Weathers levelling it again, but it was Brisbane that began putting on a show. As they threatened to clear out, Brad Davidson stepped in to give Hunter hope. Bombing away in the dying minutes, he hit a team-high 24 points, but he couldn't get them home.
Clearly it demonstrated that we can play against any team. What we've got to do is just learn to get consistent over 48 minutes and then perhaps learn how to win those close games.
The only drama is with Weathers, who suffered cramps but should have no dramas playing next week. Always set for one of Sydney's biggest races of the spring, County Tyrone is only firming in favouritism as things seem to be falling his way. Preferring a softer track, his solid lead-up this preparation includes a third in the 2300-metre Newcastle Cup to another warrior, one of those who'll meet over the longer journey tomorrow.
Yeah, the rain's been good for him. I don't want too much more because it's been well documented how the Randwick track is, so I don't want to see it an absolute bog, but the sting out of the track will suit him.
Given the track problems, it remains to be seen if jumping from Gate 1 in the $600,000 race will help. If numbers do, it'll be his 5th start this preparation, and that's traditionally been the one he does his best work. His trainer obviously hopes so tomorrow.
Well, these are the races you aim for, you know, the big prize money and Group 1 status. So this is the race he's been set for a few months now, so it comes all down to tomorrow.
While most attention will be on Epsom Day in Sydney, Fastnet Rock continues his lead-up for the $1 million Caulfield Guineas also tomorrow in Melbourne. A good thing beaten last start, the Paul Perry-trained 3-year-old will contest the Concept Sports Stakes at Flemington. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
A couple of years ago, the Coliseum could only be described as one of Newcastle's grubbiest buildings. Before he died in 2002, colourful Mayfield identity Leo Maley ran and lived in the general goods store without electricity or running water. While it's believed he was a genius and millionaire, neighbours alleged Maley dumped raw sewage in the street and never cleaned the building.
He was a rich person walking around like a pauper.
Now the 83-year-old dilapidated building has been turned into this. The Coliseum was today opened as an antique store after 18 months of extensive repairs and, more importantly, cleaning.
It hasn't been cleaned for 20, 30 years, just full of rubbish. All the windows were broken, the floor was filthy, the ceiling was falling in, the water was leaking in, and termites had eaten half the timbers away.
While happy to bury many aspects of the Coliseum's history, the new owners have kept some features, such as the original lead light. They're now hoping the historic building becomes a true rags to riches story. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Western Australia is hardly known as a league powerhouse, but former Newcastle Knights and Wildfire John Allinson led out a team that had surprised all at these championships. After a dour first half on a boggy St John Oval, Matt Atkin charged over for first points. When Brad Baker kicked them 7 points clear late in the second, many thought the title was indeed heading west. But South came home the better. A try under the posts, followed by a levelling field goal just 10 seconds from full time, which forced everyone into overtime. Damien Goodfellow, living up to his name, scoring to give South a nail-biting title win. To surfing, and the big swell forced the East Coast women's tag team titles south to Blacksmiths from Redhead Beach for some protection. While some still got the odd hammering, Gold Coast teams lived up to their reputation, with Kira looking good as they began their title defence today against the host club, Trimmen Women's Board Riders. What a difference a day makes. After a horrible first day out, the rain went but the swell stuck around to provide beautiful conditions for the East Coast Women's Tag Team Surfing Championship final. 2 home club sides reached the 4-team final, but as expected, it was the Gold Coast sides that dominated, with Snapper Heads holding out Kira for the title. Still on the water, and the National and World's Sailability Regatta wound up on Lake Macquarie today in glorious conditions. After enduring the wet weather also on day one, the strong fleet of 80 craft could only fault a lack of wind early today before getting in some 20 races.
Despite missing part of his legs and one hand, Mark Whiteman grew up with the belief there was nothing he couldn't do. It was this optimism that helped the amputee earn a place in the 2000 Paralympic sitting volleyball side, which finished in 11th position. Only 20 people in Australia currently play the sport at a representative level, but it's hoped that will change following a training camp in Newcastle on the weekend. It's here at Newcastle University that they'll learn the basics of the sport, which in essence is volleyball played while sitting down. A lowered net is used and the court size reduced.
I feel it's a good sport that could be introduced into sort of university environment, like a lot of young people that play volleyball.
It's one of very few sports that enables disabled and able-bodied people to compete side by side, and it's hoped that a national competition will be established as early as next year.
It's hard to get people, until they actually see it played, that they realise that you can move and it is a fast, fun sort of game.
Colleen West, NBN News. There wasn't an electric bread maker in sight, instead the walking, talking variety known as apprentices. As these men and women have discovered, there's a lot more to making a tasty loaf than throwing some ingredients together. There's the protein content and yeast fermentation to consider, along with the colour of the final product. 250 apprentice bread makers from across the nation are vying for one of 20 spots at a training week in Melbourne. Today it was time for Hunter bread makers to mix, knead and bake their loaves of art, which were then given the once-over and that all-important sniff test.
If you tweak recipes too much, of course, it will make a big difference to the finished product.
The competition is a joint initiative between TAFE and Baker's Delight and recognises the dedication and long hours bread makers put into their job.
Experience, I get to find out how to improve my product.
No, I couldn't go back to working day shift. Just having the day to myself, not having to go to work. Couldn't handle being inside while it's sunny outside anymore.
The winners will be announced next month.
Well, not really. Not yet, anyway. The promenade ends here at the marina end and here at the city end, with the 1 kilometre section in between following Honeysuckle Drive around the back of the cargo sheds. It's likely to be finished about the year 2012.
Well, the promenade will roll out with the rest of the project. Of course, the Lee Wharf project is now starting to come to fruition, and we expect that will be done in the next 5 years, and then the balance of that probably 3 years after that. So we're looking at a period of 5 to 8 years until everything looks as good and as active as this.
Harbour Square near the Crown Plaza was opened today with the ringing of the bell from the ship Regent Murray that was wrecked at the entrance to the harbour in 1899. The square is the centrepiece of Honeysuckle's city end and already has several new cafes and restaurants open or under construction. And there's also growing support for the Stockton ferry service to be extended to include a third stop somewhere further west in the harbour.
Look, any connection we can have with the waterfront and the people of Newcastle can have with the waterfront is only going to be a bonus for what we're all trying to achieve here, and that is to open the harbour to the people of Newcastle.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
You don't have to look far down the Tigers roster to see that basketball isn't about age, it's about ability. And Melbourne have it in spades. Knowing full well opposition teams will still try and run them off their more experienced legs, they've built a game plan to get around it.
We believe that we've made a few minor changes, and also the style of play we play now. We use a lot more people, we go 10 deep and we spread the minutes out.
The ageless skipper, wary of the new look Pirates, especially his opposing captain in Ben Melmoth.
When he starts scoring and gets on the boards, he's a very, very good rebounder. He has been right throughout his career.
Used to identify talent, Grom search continued today, but everyone was on the lookout for decent waves at Bar Beach. It was a day for the girls, with the under-16s in the water for the first time, but the conditions really made it tough. And triathlete Paul Matthews has returned from a season competing in Europe to defend his Maitland Triathlon title on Sunday. Now a must-attend event on the triathlon calendar, many sign up for the race, which is based in nearby Morpeth, as a final hit-out before the Foster Half Ironman, scheduled for later this month.
It's been a long 4-year tussle for the players and myself, but we feel vindicated that the approach we took was the only way to move forward, and today we've got a result.
Pirates fans may be one-eyed, but it's taken just 2 games to get hooked on the Hunter side, not to be left stargazing. The Pirates went about their work with barely a bad player on court, as everyone pitched in to help build an early lead. A 6-point first quarter margin only grew before half-time, as the Pirates continued to pile on the points and the pizzazz. Brian Weathers stamping himself as someone to watch this season in a new-look side that belied the fact this was only their second game of the season. Weathers, though, was in everything, stealing the show as the Tigers were forced to chase. Melbourne had some tricks of their own. Closing the margin in the final term, Dave Thomas, one of 3 Tigers to hit 17 points, along with Leonard Copeland. Hunter, though, had a real night out, with all starters hitting the score sheet. Brad Davidson's 18 a highlight, but it was Weathers' 24 points that was the inspiration. The 95 to 88 point win, their first of the season, but you'd think only one of many, with players hoping to grow accustomed to scenes like this.
It's been a long 18 months for Dean Williams, unable to find an apprentice roof plumber to assist his growing business.
Just struggle along and until hopefully someone comes along.
There are similar stories to be told right across the Hunter, with many businesses struggling to meet a growing demand for metal roof installation.
10 years ago they stopped putting apprentices on, and it's sort of made it hard now for us to get tradesmen.
There are currently no roof plumbing courses available in the region, forcing all apprentices to Gymea in Sydney. But now a pre-trade course is being offered at Maitland, giving prospective workers an idea of what the job involves.
It's going to be a crash course initially, sort of coming from school to working 5 days a week here, and then 5 days a week out on site. But if they're prepared to put the effort in, I think they can get a good result.
Students will spend part of the 13-week course with local roofing companies. It's hoped they'll then be offered apprenticeships, boosting the number of local workers. There will be some travelling required for the students though, with all theory work to be completed in Sydney. Colleen West, NBN News. He's rewritten the history books, Bob Baldwin's election campaign paying dividends in the form of a 5.1% swing to the Liberal Party. It has certainly removed the marginal seat status from the Paterson electorate, but Mr Baldwin refutes claims his wish list will now be ignored by the coalition.
We could never treat this as a safe seat because those that came on board this election to vote for us can very easily go back to Labor at the next election.
He's certainly not resting on his laurels today, back on the job tackling issues of road funding and after-hours healthcare. But they're issues researchers from Newcastle University say could now fall on deaf ears.
What we have is effectively a whole raft of very safe seats on either side of politics, and that's not good for levering promises of spending.
And despite the plans of all elected federal members to boost employment in the region, Professor Mitchell says those efforts are also likely to go unnoticed.
The mortgage belt fears about interest rates, again all erroneous, and I guess the international security issues have swamped day-to-day things.
The age-old routine of swirl, smell and of course taste from a discerning judge can be just as valuable to a winemaker as a well-aged red. 4 national judges were in Maitland today, tasting the region's top drops. The boutique show gives winemakers who crush or grow less than 350 tonnes of grapes a year the chance to be recognised.
If they can get a gold, silver or bronze, it adds confidence to the buyers to know that that wine is as good as the majors produce.
When it started 16 years ago, the show included 18 wineries. It's matured this year to 90 vineyards, entering 452 wines. Of course, the judging is a tough job, but someone's got to do it. The Hunter's most popular variety, Semillon, caused judges an hour of debate this morning, while all agreed a new favourite has emerged.
This year, I think, is the best Verdelho that we've seen.
With a fruity white on the menu, it's a labour of love for judges that doesn't even stop for lunch during 4 days of intense tasting, and the experts have some early tips for buyers.
The standout have been some of the 2004 whites, which were quite extraordinarily good.
The Hunter's top red and white wine will be announced on Thursday. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
This is all that remains of the Cardiff Food for Less, a brick shell and a few twisted trolleys. Last night the supermarket building was totally gutted by fire, causing the roof to cave in. Just before 11 p.m, the New South Wales Fire Brigade received numerous 000 calls to say the supermarket was well alight. The local Cardiff Brigade was first to arrive.
They put in an urgent request for assistance, and we responded another 5 brigades, and ultimately 30 firefighters were called in to assist to battle the blaze.
Despite the intense heat and smoke, the firefighters were able to save a section of the building, the rest completely destroyed. Fire investigators believe the blaze was sparked by an electrical fault. A group of tradesmen were welding inside the supermarket at the time of the fire and noticed sparks and flames in an electrical switch room. A spokesperson for Food for Less says no jobs will be lost, with all staff to be moved to various Woolworths supermarkets in the area. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
You saw it here first. Josh Valentine clearing the ball from the back of the Wallabies pack. The 21-year-old, who hails from the Hunter Valley, appears destined for a future in the green and gold after coach Eddie Jones called him into the Wallabies training squad this week to cover for unavailable captain and halfback George Gregan.
I was back home in Singleton and got the call on the Saturday night, and it was my mum's 50th birthday, and it was a bit of a surprise for her as well.
While he won't get a jumper for the Wallabies' coming European tour, a strong rookie Super 12 season with Queensland has seen Valentine firm as a future Australian scrum half. And what a rugby pedigree the Hunter lad has. Valentine learnt his trade as a number 9 under the eye of Steve Merrick at the Singleton Bulls. The fast, strong and skillful Merrick played 2 tests for Australia before making his famous decision to live in the country ahead of playing rugby in the city.
Yeah, I spoke to him on the Friday night, and he's rapt about it. He said, he loves every minute of it, seeing the young blokes get a run and get involved with it. He's been really good for me. I've spoken to him a fair bit.
Valentine's first training camp with the Wallabies finishes tomorrow, with the Super 12's pre-season to start on Monday. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Almost every school has a teacher like Fred Cracknell. That special individual, a life-changing teacher who makes an enormous impact on generations of kids, motivating them to follow their passions. At Avondale School at Coorambong, music teacher Fred Cracknell has been doing just that for 41 years.
making music with young people has an excitement about it that I think few other things in school has. I mean, it's quite different to working with adults. With teenagers, you see great improvement over a relatively short period of time with the right sort of coaching, and that's really gratifying.
Mr Cracknell has been an inspiring dynamic music teacher for 21 years. The other 20 he spent as a principal. He's taught the love of music to hundreds of students, many going on to tour the world with his concert and stage bands, some even making a career of it. Fred Cracknell was one of 80 educators recognised last night in Newcastle. The Australian College of Educators acknowledged excellence in education, handing out certificates of recognition. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. The Newcastle Film Festival is back with a vengeance, with a colourful new patron, Yahoo Serious, and a new competition format.
We have two competitions. One's just for Hunter residents, which is the Newcastle Short Film Awards, which we're asking for entries of under 10 minutes. We also have a new competition that we're starting called Pitch It, which is a script pitching competition.
And organisers are expecting plenty of entries in the short film competition, with the growing popularity in filmmaking in the Hunter, as more and more people reach for their digital handycams and PC editing programs. It seems filmmaking is becoming far more accessible for the everyday budding film producer.
Anybody can get out there and do it these days. It's great with all the technology that's available.
And Yahoo Serious agrees. He says filmmaking has come a long way since he began, with technology opening it up to the masses.
I sort of went to art school here in Newcastle, and I wanted to make films. So I got a job at NBN, and I got a job as a film editor and a director, and I used to get the prints of the films and look at them at night and try and teach myself how to make films.
Film lovers will also be catered for, with Greater Union Newcastle reviving an old Newcastle-made film, Romance of the Surf, along with screening features and shorts from all over the world. The festival begins on November 12. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Scenes like this would have the old jailmaster turning in his grave. Wind the clock back a couple of decades and fine wine, food and fashion was the last thing you would see in a maximum security penitentiary. But that's the whole charm of Cellar in the Cells, the latest tourism initiative of Maitland City Council.
We were looking for a different way of selling Hunter boutique wines to the region. And we thought, we've got a great venue here, the jail. Let's bring the winemakers and the restaurants to the people rather than having the people go out to them.
From strawberries to puddings, Chardonnays to Merlots and all things in between. The tourism boom in the valley is a product of its own produce, and they were all on display. Still on wine, and judges have announced the winners of the Hunter Boutique Winemakers Show. There were more than 30 categories, but Chateau Francois took out the major white wine gong for its 1997 Semillon, and the best red wine of the show was awarded to Rosebrook Estate's 2003 Shiraz.
It was all used as bait in the carp bash at Talara Lagoon today, and didn't it bring in some beauties? More than 400 anglers did their bit for the environment and charity by casting in the hope of catching a carp, and quite a few did. More than 50 kilograms of the pest was pulled out of the waterway today.
Army reservists helped shift various items from the Maritime Museum at Fort Scratchley to a temporary home. Among the articles, the original time ball from a top customs house and a torpedo. They'll remain in storage until the museum's new home at Honeysuckle is built in a couple of years' time.